My name is Andy Quinn. I'm a graduate of the Eller School of Management with an economics degree class of 1994. And I'm the managing partner of a lobbying consulting firm called McAllister & Quinn, and we're headquartered here in Washington, D.C., about 3 blocks north of the White House. I wish I could tell you it was a brilliant plan that was flawlessly executed. That would be a complete and utter total lie. My sophomore year, first semester, I was in the student union eating breakfast, and I was reading the Arizona Daily Wildcat, and I saw an ad from a U.S. senator for internships. And he's since retired, this guy by the name of Dennis DeConcini, who had served in Washington from like the mid-'70s all the way through. He had a district office on Broadway Boulevard, about 5 blocks from campus, and he was offering students internships. And I didn't even know, like, none of my friends were interning at the time. I didn't have any older siblings who had interned. So I went down there and started working in his Tucson district office. And then after about a semester, I found out that you could intern up on Capitol Hill, which again, I spent 6 months in this office. I had no idea that you could even go to Washington. And then I took a semester off from school, went up to Washington, and just absolutely fell in love with it and working on Capitol Hill. I came back the following summer. When I graduated in '94, my big goal was to come to Washington and work on Capitol Hill. A little bump in the road is Senator DeConcini ultimately retired at the end of 1994. And so I was lucky enough to get together with a guy by the name of Steny Hoyer, who was a member of Congress from Maryland, actually through somebody who I interned with, who ended up being his scheduler. And he's the current House Majority Leader. And I had the pleasure of working for him for almost 10 years up on Capitol Hill. It doesn't. I think it does in the sense that it taught me how to think. It taught me how to assimilate information. I think my writing skills from the time I walked in freshman year to the time that I walked out the door, increased immeasurably. My role in the role of the business, it's not like I was like a nursing student or an engineer where there's like a very clear pathway between you're in this school and now you're working in a healthcare system. And mine was a little bit more circuitous. So like in the day-to-day work that I do, my coursework and the curriculum doesn't really reflect in the work that I'm doing. Although I can certainly say is that as a result of going through there, my ability to do what I do today is a direct reflection of that. I think internships are absolutely critical. We're about a $25 million company. We have about 50 full-time staff and about 300 contractors who work for us. Not interning in college is just a huge mistake if you don't do it for a variety of reasons. Number one is it's giving you actual real-life experience, not classroom experience. I think the other thing too is that increasingly for folks in my position who hire people is we hire a lot of folks who were our interns. And the way I look at it is if you spend a summer interning at our firm, that's like literally like a summer-long job interview. Most job interviews don't really last that long, but versus I can get a whole semester or a whole summer to really see how those students perform. That's a huge thing. But that is something that, at least in my industry, that gateway is usually some kind of internships. Now, if you're going to be in lobbying like I am, is almost all those folks come from government, whether they're in the executive branch or my work was all up on Capitol Hill, a lot of these government agencies likewise have internship programs that are tremendous gateways that students should definitely avail themselves of. I would say really 2 things. Number one is, all of our interns for my company used to come, they came to Washington, D.C., either through their university had a program or they found us and they spent a semester or summer with them. Now, frankly, it's like during the pandemic, we ran virtual internships. So, one of the best interns we had this past summer was actually a kid from the University of Wisconsin at Madison. He never came to Washington, D.C. And so now all of a sudden, one of the things that I would say is like, if I were a student in Tucson right now is, Tucson is not the biggest city. There's not 1 million Fortune 500 companies that are headquartered there. However, virtual internships are definitely, I think, a wave of the future that we're going to continue to see. The other thing too is that don't be limited by what you see out the door. If you're interested in a company or in an industry or in a sector, there's nothing wrong with proactively reaching out and saying, hey, I would like to do an internship, even if they don't have that. Most people are not going to say no to free labor. Now, some of the folks, like they're transitioning, which I think is actually a good thing, transitioning away from totally free internships to ones that have stipends or in some cases pay, a $15, minimum wage, which I'm fully supportive of. If you're interested in a company, don't just wait there's nothing precluding you from reaching out to them proactively and saying, hey, I would like to potentially work with you. Don't just think because they haven't listed something on ZipRecruiter or Indeed or whatever job listing that you're looking for. Don't let that be a limiting factor. And then certainly, if you're in Tucson, don't let just what's in Tucson confine you, and don't just sit there and focus solely on the summertime. The summer internships, in my opinion, are infinitely more competitive. A lot of folks who utilize interns really do have a problem in the spring and in the fall doing that. And if you're willing to allocate, let's say 15, 20 hours per week, which is not particularly onerous depending on what your class schedule is, there's a real opportunity for you to get your foot in the door. A lot of the activities that you work on, and I'm not even talking schoolwork. I mean, I'm talking like I was involved in the Greek system when I was a student, is learning how to deal with interpersonal connections. For 2.5 years, I used to work the door at O'Malley's Bar and Grill. And, you want to talk about diffusing tense situations, try trying to get a guy who's twice your size, who's drunk, out of the bar, minimal disruption as possible. At the time, it didn't even occur to me that was a skill that would be useful later in life. So I think that all those skills are important. The other thing too is I think that is just not unique to U of A, but large state schools, is you can get an unbelievably great education at them, but you have to work a little bit harder for it. This is not like an Ivy League school where everything's more or less spoon-fed to you. From my friends who have done that. So I think a lot of those skills from students who come from large state institution where things are a little bit harder, like to get classes, the classes are a little bit bigger. You have to be very proactive with your faculty members if you want that direct interaction. Those are all things that in the working world actually can make you more successful. I think the only criticism that I would have, now mind you, it's been over 25 years since I've been on campus, so the curriculum I hope to God has changed somewhat, is the one piece that we see as someone who hires a lot of people is they have a good education, but the school has never necessarily taught them how to thrive in an organization. So for example, how do you find mentors? How do you maximize it? When you go into a job, what do you want to get out of that? So for example, if you took a job in a healthcare consulting firm, what skills do you hope to get 2 years later that's going to make you even more marketable, either internally within that organization or to go to another organization? Some of those skills, like they aren't necessarily taught, things like project management, personal time management. Those are some gaps that I think, folks should definitely work at. But I think, I have nothing but good things to say about the education that the U of A gave.